All right, chapter 15.3 is going to focus on Charles Darwin. And what I want you to understand is don't learn all about his life. I like learning about his life and just everything before the Galapagos. I want you to focus on his time on the Galapagos and the mechanism he figured out on the Galapagos. But basically, Darwin came from an educated family. His dad was a physician, like his grandfather. We talked about in the last section, and so he sent Darwin to medical school. He failed out. He actually hated the sight of blood. Darwin then went to clergyman school, like to become a religious person. At this time period, again, really the job really kind of signified your class system in England, and his father wanted him to have this nice job, and Darwin didn't like the idea of becoming a clergyman. However, he did really like his science classes, and became an assistant to the botanist John Henslow. Um, Through his time with Henslow, he actually gained a great understanding of plant and animal diversity. There we go. Clicking forward. There we go. He also became an assistant to Adam Sedgwick, which was a modern geologist. And this is again where he starts to understand that the Earth is not very young; it's very old. Now, on his voyage, there's a lot that goes on with his voyage, but I'm not going to bore you to death on these things. But basically, Darwin got the opportunity. He wasn't like asked to be a naturalist. He got the opportunity to be a companion to the captain on this voyage, and it was supposed to take only 2 years, but then it actually took 5 years in all. But the main objective of the voyage was to map out the coastline of South America. Now, one of the things that was really cool is up on the Andes when he was visiting the South America, he found shells and marine fossils on the top of these mountains, and it didn't make sense to him how these got there. And if you can think about these mountains weren't always at like the top, or this area was not always a mountainous region. At one point, this land was actually submerged by water. So this concept of deep time, and it takes millions of years for these things that are really low to become really high, and really high to become really low. These shifts are due to millions and billions of years of evolution and time, not just a few thousand years. You can see here again, these are the cliffs actually in the South American coastline that he saw, and you can see this deep time in these cliffs and the layers of rocks. Now, during Darwin's last part of his voyage, he went to somewhere called the Galapagos Islands, and I did go there back in 2000. I think was it 18 or 17? It's a couple years ago, and I can't tell you how beautiful these islands are. I wish I could go back. It was just an amazing trip. But basically, they're about 600 miles west of Ecuador. You can see here the islands. They're about 600 miles west, and they're just this group of volcanic islands. That means that the islands are formed because of volcanic eruptions, and then over years they become colonized by different species. Now, one of the things I learned there was there is a it's like on the edge of a plate or several plates, and a lot of currents run through this area. So this is almost like a perfect experiment for evolution to take to occur. And you can see here what I'm showing you is different parts of the different islands have different vegetation, elevations. When I taught this class before I went to the Galapagos Islands, I was really like, oh, okay, there's diversity in the islands. I can't tell you how much diversity there is. Some islands it's like a desert, some islands it's like a rainforest, some islands it's like there's a lot of grasslands. There are just tons of different parts of each island that are specific and have different environments. These are those the Galapagos tortoises. These guys are absolutely just beautiful. You can see me there. I was just grinning from ear to ear. I love these guys. These are so cool. But basically, what Darwin found out was some of the inhabitants of these islands said that they could tell a tortoise from the specific island based on its shape. And so he started seeing these similarities and differences between the tortoises, and he actually started really, pinpointing, hey, there are these really big differences on these islands of these tortoises, and I don't know why. And he started trying to investigate this, and same with the bird species. He found different bird species on these islands, and they were specific to certain islands. Now, what actually was occurring here was natural selection and evolution over like thousands and thousands of years. But basically, each island had a different food source, or had a different ecosystem that evolved or naturally selected for one type of bird. You can see here the different types of birds and how they use their beaks. And this was a big evolutionary selection force for these birds or the tortoises. You can see how these different birds use their different beaks here. Okay, some use them to crack to crack open large seeds. Some use them for eating the cactus or the fruits off of the cactus. Some were vegetarian. Some will use them to get insects. But basically, each had a different function. All right, so natural selection, you can see here. This is basically what natural selection is. We have organisms exhibiting variation between generations. Organisms complete or compete for natural and limited resources. So again, there's not going to be enough resources for every offspring to survive. Individuals within a population different in terms of their reproductive success. So again, not every species, not every organism in a species is going to survive. Others will reproduce more than others, and that leads to species becoming more adapted to their environment and its changes. What we basically call this is an organism's fitness. So how successful that organism not only living but also reproducing. So you can see your lower fitness, lower amounts of offspring, higher fitness, more amounts of offspring. You can see what that leads to overall. An adaptation, this is an inherited characteristic that improves an organism's ability to survive. So some reason there's a mutation, there's something going on, and you get this adaptation for a certain type of feature, and that adaptation will allow you to either survive more and reproduce more or survive less and reproduce less. So Darwin saw this on the islands, and he actually went home. And it wasn't like he had this eureka moment on the islands. He didn't understand evolution until he got back and was studying it for years and years and years, and then published his book. But he also corresponded with a scientist called Alfred Russel Wallace, who is also a naturalist, going through the Malay Archipelago. And you probably, if you're in my period 3 and 4 AP class, you saw a documentary and that talked about Wallace. If you're in my period 2 class, this was what they did on Monday. But basically, Alfred Russel Wallace was seeing the same things, and they corresponded about it. A lot of people give a lot more credit to Alfred Russel Wallace, but it was Darwin that actually did come up and figure out natural selection first. But basically, these two concepts or their ideas of evolution were very similar. All right, so another concept that Darwin saw was artificial selection. He actually saw this while gaining, again, more evidence for his theory of evolution. And this is how humans control certain species and either allow them to reproduce or don't allow them to reproduce. We see this a ton in agriculture. We see this obviously in like cats and dogs. We select for certain breeds to uh, have more features or have features for a specific type of function. And Darwin saw this and actually kind of related it to his natural selection. So he said, "Hey, this would be like artificial selection, but this is without human control. This is just the nature doing it. So take this concept of artificial selection and move it towards nature, and that's what basically natural selection is." I'll talk more about these dogs and cats and how they evolve in class, and then you can see all these different species of plant life and so on and so forth, chickens, livestock. But basically, what happened was get both of them on the same slide. Oh, we can't for some reason. So basically, what happened was theory of natural selection was outlined in his book, and it took him like 20 years to produce. And again, he became like the father of evolution. And that's what we're going to stop.